What if I told you that the deadliest pandemic in human history didn't begin where you think it did? For centuries, the Black Death has terrified our imagination. Half of Europe's population gone in just a few years. Entire cities erased. Families wiped out overnight. But here's the mystery. No one ever truly knew where it started. Was it China? The Middle East? Somewhere in Europe itself? Well now, after 700 years, science has finally solved the riddle. And the truth will shock you. So sit back, because today we're uncovering the real origin of the Black Death, the disease that changed the course of human history forever. Our journey begins not in Europe, but in a quiet valley in Kyrgyzstan, Central Asia. At first glance, it's an ordinary place, rolling hills, rivers, villages. But beneath the soil, archaeologists discovered something chilling. A cluster of medieval graves, all dated to the same year, 1338. Carved on the tombstones were words no historian could ignore. Pestilence. People here, long before Europe's nightmare, had died suddenly and in great numbers. For decades, historians debated, was this the spark that ignited the Black Death? At the time, it was only speculation. But science was about to bring the dead back to life, in a way no one expected. Let's rewind. The Black Death, or bubonic plague, first exploded in Europe in 1347. Within just a few years, it killed nearly 50 million people. Think about that, almost half of Europe's population gone. The symptoms were horrifying. High fever, vomiting, painful swellings called buboes that turned black. People could die within days, sometimes within hours. Chroniclers of the time described the plague as if the world itself were ending. But here's the thing, even in the middle of this chaos, no one knew where it had come from. Priests called it God's punishment. Others blamed foul air, or even foreign traders. Conspiracy theories spread faster than the disease itself. Fast forward to our time. Scientists returned to those graves in Kyrgyzstan. They carefully extracted teeth from the skeletons, teeth that had been sealed for 700 years. Why teeth? Because inside, traces of ancient DNA can survive. When they studied that DNA, they found something extraordinary, Yersinia pestis, the plague bacterium. Not just any strain, but the exact strain that later exploded into the pandemic we call the Black Death. In other words, those graves in Kyrgyzstan were ground zero, the birthplace of history's deadliest killer. Now you might be wondering, how did a disease from a remote valley in Central Asia spread to Europe so quickly? The answer lies in trade. In the 14th century, the Silk Road connected east and west. Caravans of merchants carried silk, spices, and precious goods. But they also carried stowaways, rats, and the fleas that lived on them. Those fleas carried Yersinia pestis. One bite was enough to set off a chain reaction. As traders moved from city to city, the plague moved with them. By the time it reached the ports of the Black Sea, it was unstoppable. Ships carried it to Italy, France, England, and beyond. The pandemic had begun. Europe was utterly unprepared. Imagine a medieval town, crowded houses, poor sanitation, people and animals living side by side. Perfect conditions for the plague. Within months, entire villages disappeared. In Florence, so many died that there weren't enough living to bury the dead. In England, chroniclers wrote of empty houses, where cattle wandered freely because their owners were gone. Panic spread. Some turned to religion, believing the end of the world had come. Others turned against minorities, scapegoating Jews and foreigners, leading to horrific violence. But nothing stopped the plague. Death was everywhere, on the streets, in homes, in churches. By the time the first wave ended in 1353, tens of millions were dead. But the story didn't end there. The plague returned, again and again, for centuries, and yet, out of this tragedy came transformation. With so many dead, labor was scarce. Workers demanded better wages, and the old feudal system began to crumble. Medicine also changed. Doctors realized that disease could spread from person to person, planting the seeds of modern public health. The Black Death had destroyed, but it had also reshaped society. For centuries, historians argued about the origin. Some swore it began in China. Others believed the Middle East. But the DNA evidence from Kyrgyzstan changed everything. It showed that the strain from 1338 was the ancestor of all later plague strains. This wasn't just one outbreak. It was the beginning of a genetic tree that would branch out across continents. Finally, the mystery was solved. The Black Death began in Central Asia, and from there, it rewrote the fate of the world. You might be thinking, why does this matter now? The Black Death was 7 centuries ago. Here's why. Plague still exists today. It hides in small pockets around the world, in rodents and fleas. But now we have antibiotics to treat it. It's no longer the terror it once was. More importantly, the study of ancient DNA helps us understand pandemics. Just like COVID-19, the plague shows how disease can spread through trade and travel. The past warns us of the future. So next time you hear about the Black Death, remember this. It wasn't just a European story. It began in a quiet valley in Kyrgyzstan, where a few forgotten graves held the secret for centuries. From there, it swept across continents, killing millions, reshaping nations, and leaving scars that shaped the modern world. But it also left us a lesson. Knowledge is survival. And sometimes, the dead still have something to teach the living. This was the real origin of the Black Death.